The night was thick with humidity, the kind that clung to your skin like an extra layer of worry. Marcus Bennett gripped the steering wheel of his beat-up Ford truck, the old engine humming beneath the steady rhythm of gospel music leaking from the speakers. It had been another long day at Dawson's auto shop, 12 hours of busted engines, grease-stained hands, and customers who always promised to come back next week with the rest of their payment. But Marcus didn't mind. He never had. Life hadn't given him much, but it had taught him something more valuable. Peace doesn't come from what you own, but from what you give. The digital clock on his dashboard blinked 8:42 p.m. as the last traces of sunset faded over the Tennessee hills. The road stretched out in front of him, empty, quiet, almost too still. Then, just beyond the curve, the glow of hazard lights flickered weakly in the dark. Marcus slowed down. There, on the shoulder, was a silver sedan, its back tire shredded like confetti. A woman stood beside it, pacing, one hand pressed to her forehead. Her clothes, a cream blouse and gray slacks, told him she'd come straight from work. Her shoulders sagged with exhaustion and something deeper, fear. He pulled over without a second thought, flipped his hazard lights on, and stepped out. The humid air wrapped around him like a blanket as he called out, "Evenin', ma'am. You okay?" The woman turned sharply. Her face caught the beam of his headlights, pale skin, dark circles under her eyes, and tears she was clearly trying to hide. I blew a tire," she said, her voice trembling. "My phone died, and I've been out here for almost an hour. No one stopped." Marcus nodded slowly, keeping his voice calm. "No worries. You're safe now. I can help you out." "I don't have cash," she blurted out quickly, defensive now, like she'd said it a dozen times before. Marcus gave a gentle chuckle. "Didn't ask for any, ma'am. I just don't like seeing people stranded." He popped open his truck bed, grabbed his old toolbox, and crouched by the flat tire. His fingers worked with quiet precision, loosening the lugs, checking the spare, brushing away gravel. The woman hovered nervously nearby, wringing her hands. "You can wait in the car if you want," he said kindly. "Bugs out here think we're on the dinner menu." She hesitated, then smiled faintly and sat on the passenger seat, watching him through the window. Marcus hummed as he worked, the tune soft and soulful. It was a habit his grandmother had taught him. "Hum while you help," she used to say, "keeps your spirit light." When the last bolt tightened, he rose slowly, wiping his hands on a rag. "There," he said, satisfied. "You're good to go. Spare's a little old, so don't push it too far, just enough to get home." The woman stepped out, blinking like she couldn't believe it was already done. "You're fast," she said, almost breathless. Marcus grinned. "Practice. Been fixin' things since I was tall enough to hold a wrench." She bit her lip, studying him for a moment. "Thank you. Really? I didn't think anyone would stop." He shrugged. "World's still got some good folks left. You just gotta meet 'em at the right mile marker." For a few seconds, silence hung between them, the good kind. Then she reached into her purse and pulled out a business card. "I know you said you don't want money, but, please, at least take this. My name's Victoria Langford. I run a local company. If you ever need anything, call me." Marcus took the card politely, tucking it into his shirt pocket without looking at it. "Appreciate it, ma'am. But truth is, I don't do good deeds for favors." Victoria smiled, a real, tired smile this time. "Then maybe you're one of the few people who still remember what kindness means." She got back into her car. As her headlights faded down the road, Marcus stood there a moment, watching, the night strangely quiet again. He finally climbed into his truck, turned the key, and muttered, "Just another day, Lord." He didn't notice the faint red light on her dashboard, a dash cam, still recording. Nor did he know that the footage would soon find its way into hands that could change his life forever. As he drove off, the rain began to fall soft at first, then heavier, drumming on the roof like a heartbeat. Marcus smiled to himself, feeling that quiet satisfaction that always came after helping someone. When he reached home, a small, two-bedroom house on the edge of town, his dog Blue bounded out from the porch, tail wagging wildly. Marcus knelt, scratching behind his ears. "Ain't no food yet, Blue." "Just got home," he chuckled. He poured a cup of coffee, sat on his porch swing, and looked out into the misty night. Somewhere down that long stretch of highway, a woman was safe because he'd stopped. He didn't think much more of it. But fate, as always, was already in motion. The morning sun crept over the rooftops of South Memphis, slicing through the curtains of Marcus Bennett's modest home. The scent of brewed coffee and fried eggs filled the kitchen. He stood at the counter, wearing his grease-stained work shirt, tapping rhythmically on the counter to an old blues tune on the radio. Outside, life was ordinary: a neighbor watering her garden, kids dragging backpacks to the bus stop, the mailman whistling his usual tune. Everything about the morning screamed normal. Until it didn't. Just as Marcus was about to leave for work, he heard a low rumble, not the familiar sputter of old engines he usually fixed, but something newer, heavier, deliberate. Tires crunched on gravel. He looked out the window and froze. A black SUV, spotless, tinted, and gleaming like polished obsidian, rolled to a slow stop in front of his house. For a second, Marcus wondered if he was still half asleep. Folks in his neighborhood didn't drive cars like that. The engine shut off. Two men stepped out, tall, clean-cut, wearing black suits and earpieces. The kind you only saw guarding someone important. Marcus's stomach tensed. What in the world? He opened the front door cautiously. "Can I help y'all?" One of the men gave a polite nod. "Mr. Marcus Bennett." Marcus crossed his arms. "That's me." The man glanced toward the SUV. "There's someone who'd like to speak with you." Marcus hesitated. "Somebody in that car?" "Yes, sir. She asked us to bring her personally." Now his curiosity had swallowed his caution. He stepped down the porch steps slowly, boots crunching the gravel. The rear window rolled down halfway, and for a brief second, sunlight flashed off the silver of a diamond earring. Then a familiar voice said, "Mr. Bennett." It was her. The woman from the side of the road, though she looked nothing like the one he'd helped last night. Gone were the tear-streaked cheeks and disheveled hair. Today she wore a tailored white suit, her posture composed and elegant, her voice calm but commanding. Marcus blinked. Miss Langford." She smiled faintly. "It's Mrs. Langford. But yes, we've met." The driver opened her door, and she stepped out, heels clicking on the pavement like punctuation marks. The neighbors had started peeking through blinds. Marcus rubbed the back of his neck, embarrassed. "I hope I didn't do nothing wrong." She laughed lightly, the sound crisp in the morning air. "Quite the opposite, Mr. Bennett. You did something right, something most people wouldn't." He frowned. "All I did was change a tire. That's exactly why I'm here." She motioned toward the SUV. "May I come in for a moment?" Marcus hesitated. His house wasn't much: a small living room, two old couches, a photo of his late mother hanging above the TV, but his mama had always said, "Hospitality don't care about how fancy your furniture is." He nodded. "Yes, ma'am." "Come on in." Inside, Mrs. Langford looked around thoughtfully, not judging, just observing. "You live here alone?" "Just me and my dog," Marcus said. "Blue's outside. He don't bite unless you're a mailman." That earned another small laugh from her. She took a seat on the couch and placed a sleek leather folder on her lap. "I wanted to thank you properly," she said, her tone softening. "Last night, I was on my way home from an investor dinner when my tire blew. Dozens of cars passed me. Some slowed down, stared, and kept going. You were the only one who stopped. Marcus shrugged modestly. I saw somebody needed help. Didn't think much of it. That's exactly what makes it special, she said, meeting his eyes. You helped me without hesitation. No questions, no expectations. Do you know how rare that is, Mr. Bennett? He looked away, uncomfortable with praise. Guess I was raised different. She nodded slowly. I know your type, honest, hard-working, the kind who do the right thing even when no one's watching. That's why I'm here. Marcus raised an eyebrow. Ma'am. Mrs. Langford opened the folder. Inside was a stack of papers, official looking, embossed with the company logo. I'm the CEO of Langford Motors. We're starting a new initiative, a community auto program for low-income families. Free maintenance, free safety checks. I want someone who truly cares about people to run it. Marcus blinked. Me? Yes, she said simply. You. He laughed, half in disbelief. Ma'am, I'm just a mechanic at Dawson's. Ain't got no fancy degree or nothin'. Good, she replied. That means you're real. And that's exactly what this program needs. He opened his mouth, closed it again. The whole thing felt unreal. Yesterday he was tightening lug nuts on a dusty roadside. Today, a CEO was sitting in his living room offering him a job. What's the catch? He finally asked. Mrs. Langford smiled knowingly. No catch. Just a chance to do what you already do, help people. But this time, with my company behind you. Outside, the sun had climbed higher, casting warm light through the blinds. It painted golden stripes across the faded family photo on the wall. Marcus at 16, standing beside his mother's old Chevy with a grin full of hope. He looked at it for a long moment, then turned back to her. You sure about this? Absolutely, she said. Yesterday, you fixed my tire. Today, I'd like to fix your future. For the first time, Marcus didn't have a comeback. He just nodded slowly, that humble, quiet smile spreading across his face. All right then, he said softly. Guess I'll take that chance. Mrs. Langford extended her hand. Welcome to Langford Motors, Mr. Bennett. As their hands met, Blue barked from outside, a joyful sound, like even he knew something had changed. Marcus glanced out the window at the shining black SUV, its reflection glinting like a promise. He didn't know it yet, but this was the day that would turn a small act of kindness into a story the whole city would soon talk about. The next morning, the world looked brighter, not because the weather had changed, but because Marcus Bennett's heart had. He sat on his porch swing before sunrise, coffee mug in hand, still replaying yesterday's conversation with Mrs. Victoria Langford, the CEO who'd shown up in a black SUV to offer him a job that didn't feel real. Her words echoed in his head. Yesterday you fixed my tire. Today, I'd like to fix your future. He'd barely slept, torn between excitement and disbelief. He was just a small-town mechanic who'd grown up fixing lawnmowers with his granddad. Now, somehow, a billionaire businesswoman wanted him to head a company program. It didn't make sense. But something about her tone, steady, sincere, told him this wasn't charity. It was purpose. By 8 a.m., he was dressed in his cleanest shirt and jeans, standing in front of Langford Motors' glass building downtown. He hesitated at the door, feeling out of place among the suits and polished shoes. Then, taking a deep breath, he pushed inside. The receptionist looked up with a smile. You must be Mr. Bennett. Mrs. Langford's been expecting you. Expecting me? The words made his stomach flutter. Moments later, he was walking down a hallway lined with framed photos of luxury cars, sleek designs, and company milestones. At the end stood Victoria, waiting with her usual calm grace. "Morning, Mr. Bennett," she said. "Ready to start something new?" He chuckled nervously. "Still trying to believe it's real, ma'am." "It's real," she assured him. "Come, let me show you something." They walked into a large garage bay, but instead of polished sports cars, it was filled with beat-up sedans, broken minivans, and rusty trucks. Tools lay neatly arranged, and a few mechanics were already at work. "This," she said, "is where we'll launch the community auto program. Families who can't afford car maintenance will come here. We'll fix their vehicles for free. In return, they'll volunteer in the neighborhood food drives, shelters, youth mentorships. A cycle of kindness." Marcus's eyes widened. "That's genius. It's hope," she said. "And I need someone who understands what that means to lead it. Someone who's lived it." He was silent for a long time, then said quietly, "You sure I'm that someone?" Victoria turned to face him. "I watched the dashcam footage from that night. The way you spoke, the way you calmed me down, that wasn't just kindness, Marcus. That was leadership. You see people. You don't judge them. That's rare." Her honesty hit him harder than any compliment he'd ever received. "So," she said, smiling, "what do you say?" Marcus exhaled slowly. "I say let's fix some cars, ma'am." Within days, Marcus found himself transformed. His nameplate program director, Community Auto Project, sat proudly on a simple metal desk. He wore a fresh uniform with the Langford logo stitched neatly on the chest. For the first time in years, he felt like more than a worker. He felt trusted. His first project was in Southside, a neighborhood where single mothers often walked miles to work because their cars had failed long ago. Marcus spent his days checking brakes, tuning engines, and teaching teens basic repair skills. The community began to notice. People called him the fixer, not just for cars, but for hearts. One afternoon, an elderly man rolled up in a pickup that sounded like it was coughing its last breath. "Son, she's been with me 20 years, the man said. "Don't let her die on me." Marcus smiled. "Don't worry, sir. We'll get her breathing again." When the old truck roared back to life, the man broke down crying right there in the lot. Marcus just patted his shoulder. "Ain't no such thing as too old to run," he said softly. Word spread like wildfire. Local news stations started showing up. "The mechanic who changed Memphis one tire at a time," one headline read. Marcus didn't see himself as a hero. He still lived in the same small house. Still made his coffee the same way. But every morning, when he walked into that garage full of people he was helping, he felt something new, dignity. One evening, as he was closing up, Victoria stopped by. She leaned against the doorway, watching him wipe grease from his hands. "You're becoming quite the local celebrity," she teased. He chuckled. "Celebrity? Nah. I'm just doing what I was raised to do." She smiled. "And that's exactly why it's working." There was a pause, the kind that carried gratitude without needing words. Then she said, "You know, my investors weren't sure about this program. They said it wouldn't make money. I told them it wasn't about profit. It was about people. And you proved me right." Marcus looked at her, humbled. "You gave me a chance, ma'am. That's worth more than money." Victoria tilted her head thoughtfully. "Maybe. But you gave me something too, faith in people again. I'd forgotten what that looked like." The fluorescent lights flickered softly overhead. Marcus leaned against the hood of a freshly repaired minivan and smiled. "Funny thing, ma'am. Sometimes the road breaks you down just so you can meet the right person to help you back up." Victoria nodded. "Then I guess we were both broken down at the right time." They shared a quiet laugh as the garage doors closed, the setting sun spilling gold light across the workshop floor. Outside, a few kids rode their bikes past the lot, waving at Marcus. He waved back, heart full. For the first time in his life, he wasn't just fixing cars. He was fixing stories, one good deed at a time. 6 months had passed since Marcus Bennett's life had taken a turn he never saw coming. 6 months since a simple act of kindness on a dark highway had opened a door he didn't even know existed. Langford Motors' community auto program had exploded into something bigger than anyone imagined. What started as a single garage now had 3 locations across the city. Hundreds of cars repaired, dozens of teens trained, and families who once felt forgotten now had a reason to smile again. And at the center of it all was Marcus, the man everyone called the mechanic with the golden heart. Every morning, he arrived before sunrise, unlocking the garage and letting the smell of motor oil and hope mix together in the air. He'd wave to the kids biking to school, the mothers dropping off cars, and the elders who came just to watch him work. The local news couldn't get enough. Reporters showed up often, wanting interviews, sound bites, or inspirational quotes. But Marcus always gave the same answer. I'm just a man who stopped to help. God did the rest. One crisp autumn afternoon, Victoria Langford arrived at the shop wearing a navy coat and her usual confident smile. But this time, there was something different in her eyes, a kind of pride Marcus hadn't seen before. Busy day, she asked, watching him hand a wrench to one of the teen trainees. Always, Marcus said, grinning. But that's a good thing. She nodded. You've done more than fix cars, Marcus. You've changed lives. I hope you know that. He chuckled softly. I just gave folks a place to believe again, ma'am. They did the rest. Victoria smiled but didn't respond. Instead, she motioned for him to step outside. Walk with me for a moment. They strolled toward the back lot, where the late afternoon sun painted everything gold. She stopped near a covered sign draped with a red cloth. A small crowd of employees and community members had gathered, murmuring with excitement. Marcus looked around, puzzled. What's all this? Victoria turned to the crowd, her voice warm but firm. 6 months ago, I met a man who reminded me what compassion looks like, the kind that doesn't ask who you are, what you have, or where you come from. The kind that simply acts. The audience listened intently. Marcus shifted awkwardly, realizing she was talking about him. This man's kindness didn't just save me on the side of the road, it inspired a movement that's now changing the city, she continued. Today, we honor that spirit. She reached up and pulled away the cloth. The crowd gasped, then erupted into applause. There, engraved in bold silver letters, was the new name of the program. The Bennett Foundation for Auto Hope. Marcus froze, his mouth open. Ma'am, you didn't. I did, Victoria said gently. Because it's yours now. The foundation, the program, it all carries your name. You started this with your heart. Now it's time everyone knows whose hands built it. He blinked, overwhelmed. I don't know what to say. Victoria smiled, eyes glistening. Then just keep doing what you've been doing. That's all the thanks I'll ever need. The crowd clapped again, cheering his name, Marcus. Marcus. Kids he'd mentored waved from the back, and even old Mr. Dawson from his previous shop stood teary-eyed in the crowd. Marcus took a shaky breath, stepping forward to the microphone someone had handed him. I ain't much of a speech man, he started, voice low. But I'll say this, every one of us got a choice. We can drive by when we see somebody stranded, or we can stop and help. That's all it takes to change somebody's life. One stop. 1 minute. One act of kindness. He paused, swallowing hard. Truth is, I didn't save nobody that night. God just gave me the right road at the right time. And maybe He gave me all of you too. The crowd rose to their feet, clapping through tears. Later that evening, When the crowd had gone and the lights dimmed, Marcus sat alone on the hood of an old pickup, staring at the freshly unveiled sign glowing softly in the twilight. Victoria approached quietly. "Penny for your thoughts." He smiled faintly. "Just thinking how funny life is. You stop to change a tire, and somehow, the road changes you." She laughed gently. "You know, that night. I was driving away from something. I'd just closed a deal that made me question everything: money, success, all of it. And then you showed up. A stranger who didn't want anything from me except to make sure I got home safe. You reminded me what success really means." Marcus looked up at the stars starting to appear. "Guess we both needed a little fixing that night." Victoria nodded. "Maybe that's how the world works, broken people helping each other heal." They sat in comfortable silence for a moment. Then, she said softly, "You've done something incredible here, Marcus. But I have a feeling this is just the beginning." He smiled. "If it is, then I'm ready for the ride." The camera would fade out on Marcus standing beneath the glowing sign, the Bennett Foundation for Auto Hope, his reflection shining on the chrome letters. In the distance, the rumble of a car engine echoed, a reminder of where it all began: one man, one good deed, one dark road. And as the screen faded to black, his voice would linger like a whisper of faith. "Kindness don't cost a dime, but it'll pay you back for life." The end.